Hello, everyone. Good day. Thank you for coming to the session today. I hope you guys are having a great time at CyberSec Europe. We are definitely having a great time talking with you, interacting with you, getting to know you. So, yeah, without further ado, let me just introduce myself. I'm Kartika, and I work for ManageEngine. I'm a solution specialist, and I work predominantly with endpoint management and security solutions. So today I will be talking about endpoint security and how you can create a strategy to bolster your cyber resilience and how you can go about it in a much simpler manner. So let's just get into the session now. So before we begin, can I have a show of hands for, how many of you are managing a remote or hybrid workforce? Just a show of hands for how many of you? Yeah. Yes. Yes. I just wanted to know because, most companies are asking employees to come back to work. But then I don't see that happening. Gartner didn't definitely see that happening because they put out this somewhere in the middle of the pandemic. And this is an estimate for, up till 2025. And they say remote work is here to stay. And it surely looks that way too. I mean, you can't blame them. Come on, remote work is extremely comfortable. All you need is your laptop or your smartphone, an internet connection, and most of your work data and everything is on cloud anyways. So you can just access them from anywhere. You can work from anywhere. It's extremely comfortable. And it's too much to ask people to, dress up, do the drive, commute to office, when you can just, sit at home and get things done. So you can't really blame remote work. But what it does is also take your endpoints out of the secure office network that was there before. And what happens when you take your endpoints out of that secure network? They are sitting targets, literally sitting targets for cyber attacks. And attackers know that too. So this is a latest research by IBM Security that says 90% of successful cyber attacks originate at the endpoint. So I would like to stress the fact that successful cyber attacks. So this just goes to say that if an attacker targets your endpoint, for the most part, it is successful. They can get access to your network. They can get access to your corporate data. So that is how vulnerable these endpoints are when they're taken outside your networks. So when work travels, when you take endpoints outside, when you move around with them, ideally, security must also follow, which is why the security perimeter now has moved from around your office premises to kind of around your endpoints. So your endpoints are now the new security perimeters, which is why endpoint security is in the limelight these days, and it's in the spotlight, and everybody is giving a lot of attention to securing the endpoints. Before we get into how to go about it or how to start with endpoint security, I just have another quick question. So this is just to assess, it's a fun question. So let me just go. How many attack vectors or entry points do you think a laptop has? So by this, I mean, you have a device, and how many different ways do you think an attacker can enter your network through your endpoints? 2, 5, 10, 15, any numbers? Any guesses? 5? More than 10? Any more guesses? Yeah. It is definitely more than 10, 100%. And this is not all either. I just could only accommodate so much on screen. So yeah, to give you a very brief rundown, it could be an unpatched application. It could be your elevated privileges. It could be your non-existent encryption, expired certificates, open ports, malicious websites, unfiltered URLs. There's just honestly a lot of entry points within one laptop that an attacker can use to enter your network or to compromise your network. And take this. This is just one endpoint. Take this and multiply this to, say, one employee owns 4 or 3 endpoints. And into the number of employees, you can see the attack surface just expanding like crazy. And this is very scary. So that is why we need to focus on endpoint security and on securing the endpoints. Now, how do we get started on this? So this is what I would like to call the 3-step to begin your cybersecurity or endpoint security strategy. So visibility, what you need eyes on with respect to your endpoint. What do you need to know within your endpoint to protect it? Control, what do you need to do before an attack happens? So this is what you need to do proactively to stop an attack from happening. And remediation is what do you do if you are attacked in spite of being proactive about it. Cybersecurity is not 100%, so you can do whatever you have to do, but the chances are you might still be attacked or you might still be breached. So in that case, how do you remediate it? How do you respond to it? How do you bounce back from it? So that is also a very important step. So take these 3 steps and apply this across your devices, across the apps that are on your devices, the data that is on it, the network it connects to, the web it connects to, the users that use it, and you would have your initial endpoint security strategy. Now, this is a bit vague, so let me just take 3 use cases. I'm going to pick 3 use cases. So, and then we're going to see how this model kind of helps us solve these use cases. So for the first one, we're going to trace the journey of some popular data breaches. So I'm not sure if you guys have heard of the Equifax breach. It was very, very famous back in 2017. It's a pretty old breach, but then it was a really big one. About 150 million user details were leaked, and Equifax had to pay around $200 million as compensation for this. And do you know where all of this started? Because the IT team, because the guy who was supposed to patch Apache struts forgot to do it, in spite of a patch being there for it, being available for it. He just forgot to patch it, and that's where the attackers entered the network. They did a bunch of other things wrong for it to escalate to this extent. Their network was not segmented, their credentials were in plain text, their encryption was, they hadn't renewed the encryption certificate. So there was a bunch of things on the way that were also wrong, which escalated it to this extent, but then it started at an unpatched vulnerability. Similarly, Capital One breach 2 years after, 2019. This time, it was a misconfigured firewall that let the attackers inside. Again, around 100 million credentials, user details were leaked. Axelion breach, again, there was an update that was released. Users hadn't installed that update, and around 100 companies, I guess, were affected by this breach as well. So all of these, even though they are separate events, have similar MOs. So the attacker enters through an unpatched vulnerability or a misconfiguration. He then goes around the network looking for endpoints with elevated privileges. And then he goes and it exfiltrates data or encrypts them for ransom and goes about his end goal. So how do we go about solving this? Number 1, visibility. What do we need eyes on? So we need eyes on the software vulnerabilities in our managed endpoints, the misconfigurations that are there on the endpoints, the end-of-life software and the high-risk software that the endpoint's running, applications that are running with elevated privileges, and the sensitive data on your endpoints. So this is what we need visibility into on our endpoints. Now, having a vulnerability assessment or scanning solution can easily get you most of this information. You can see software vulnerabilities, you can see your security misconfiguration, your port details, your high-risk software. So having a continuous vulnerability assessment for visibility helps greatly. The next is how are we going to control it? What do we do to avoid these attacks? So proper network segmentation to not allow them to go from one device to another and to move laterally across. Endpoint privilege management, check all of your devices. If they have excessive privilege, they don't need excessive privilege. Not all endpoints need excessive privilege. Check the privilege, cut the privilege. That could save a lot of money in such cases. And sensitive data transfer. We should always keep an eye out for sensitive data transfer. So let me just get into this a little bit more. For this, you will obviously have to start with classifying what sensitive data is. If you had attended the session from my colleague yesterday, she would have covered this in depth. So start with what is sensitive in your environment. What do you consider sensitive? Classify that. Once you have got that down, see if this data is going out of your endpoint through your files, through emails, through USB devices, through RDP transfers, through third-party cloud or native drives. See if it is being transferred in and out, and have control or restrictions over all of these transfers. So this is some ways that you can bring control to control this breach from happening. The third is remediation. So what do? We know that we are vulnerable. So what do we do then? Patch known vulnerabilities. So if there is a patch released and if it's critical, and especially if the machines that have sensitive data on them or that have elevated privileges do not have these patches, prioritize and patch them. Fix system misconfigurations. So most systems come with default configurations, and we don't do anything about that. And those are entry points most of the times. So have a solution that gives you all of these system misconfigurations that will help you push configurations to fix them from a centralized console. For the privilege, remove local admin rights. And if a system is affected, quarantine it immediately so that it doesn't move and spread across your entire network. So that was one entry point, software vulnerabilities and misconfigurations. Let's look at another entry point, which is web-based attacks. So like I said, if you have a computer, if you have internet connection, you can access your work data through browsers. You can open a browser, you can put in your URL, you can access whatever you want. So browsers are also a very easy entry points for attackers into your network. And within browsers, it's malicious add-ons, extensions, and websites that contribute to the maximum number of attacks. I'm not even kidding when I say Google had to remove 106 malicious extensions in a year. And even before they removed it, about 43 million people had already downloaded these extensions. So they just go about and steal your data, steal your cookies, steal your whatever. If you have given autofill, it will steal all of those information. So this is what these malicious add-ons and extensions were doing. So this is a big threat and a big entry point as well. Now, again, putting in our model, visibility. So what do we need to have eyes on? Obviously, all of the browser extensions and add-ons that our end users are downloading onto their devices or using. Web usage, what do they access from their work laptops? Malicious sites, do they go about accessing those? Applications and services that are running on these endpoints. So we need to have visibility in all of this. How do we go about controlling this? So when it comes to malicious add-ons, what we can do is have an extension repository. So have a repository with all of the add-ons that you need, because if you put up a strict rule saying, no, you cannot use add-ons, that is going to hit productivity pretty bad, because I personally use a lot of add-ons to get my work done a lot faster. So to kind of balance productivity and security, just have an extension repository with all of the add-ons that you trust so that users can only use those add-ons. And even if users download some add-ons that are not part of this extension repository, what you can go ahead and do is create add-on management policies, as in restrict permissions to these add-ons. So most of these add-ons have permissions to capture screenshots, to access your cookie data, to access your autofill. So what you can go ahead and do is restrict all of those permissions, so that even if the user is using the add-on, it doesn't have a lot of permissions to go about and steal your data. When it comes to websites, malicious websites, what you can do is have your safe phishing filters enabled, so that when you access a suspicious website, it automatically flags it and does not allow you to access it. You can have ad blockers. On top of that, what you can do is have web filters enabled, wherein you can blacklist malicious applications. So this is this is where we have a very layered approach to security. So I'm going to quickly go ahead and show you what I mean by that. So now I have web filters in place. So there are malicious websites that I know, and I have blocklisted all of those websites. But on top of that, even though I have blocklisted a lot of the malicious websites, a user accidentally lands on a malicious website. And when they do, a malware is downloaded. So what happens in this case? In this case, we have a download filter. So if a user bypasses the web filter, lands on a website, we have a download filter that can stop malicious downloads from being downloaded into the network. Now, let's just open up our imagination and say the download filter has also been bypassed, and the malware is now in the network. Then what do? So this is the download filter. Now the malware is in the network. Now we also have our anti-malware engine, our malware protection engines, which are AI ML powered, which these can flag the malicious executable immediately. And if it's a ransomware, we also have the option to kill the executable and restore the backup or the encrypted data automatically. Now that you know that this is a malicious executable or a malicious file that has been downloaded into your network, and once your anti-malware engine has flagged it and stopped it, what you can do is add this executable to our app control, so that it is blacklisted across your network, so that if somebody else from another computer is accidentally downloading the same thing, it will automatically block it there. So this is kind of a layered approach that we have when it comes to endpoint security. Moving on to the third use case, which is attacks through unauthorized USBs and stolen devices. Now, a lot of you might remember the USB parking lot experiment from 2016. So a bunch of students from the University of Illinois dropped around 300 USBs in parking lots, and to see if people would pick them up and plug them in. And the most shocking thing was about 48% of those USBs were picked up. Not just picked up, they were plugged in. They were also, at least one file was also opened in most of them. Now, this was very shocking. But then again, this is 2016, so now we might know better. You might say that we're better educated, we're better aware about this right now. But are we? So this is latest numbers from Statista, and it says 3 in 10 companies saw 11 to 50 malicious USB drop attacks. So this means that about 30% of companies see around 11 to 50 USB drop attacks. So USB drop attack, again, is you see a USB lying around, you pick it up, and you plug it in. Everybody knows it's a big no-no, but then it still happens. So what can we do about this? Again, visibility. We need to know everything that connects to the computers that you manage, everything. So strict device audit. And for stolen devices, we also need to have encryption in place, so that even if they're stolen, they're encrypted. Moving on to control. What can you do to safeguard against these attacks? So obviously, controlled usage of peripheral devices. You set strict rules as to what can connect into your network. Only trusted USBs can connect into your network. And if they are not trusted, but your employee still wants to use it, maybe you can give them an option, flexibility, saying connect to the network, but only for 2 hours, after which you will be blocked out. So you can set up rules without being extremely strict and without affecting productivity by much. Next is, of course, ensure BitLocker encryption and firewall encryption on all devices. This is as a precautionary method. And then you can enable file transfer audit to see what is being taken out or, with your USBs that have been connected. When it comes to remediation, okay, the person is already connected the USB. What do we do? As I told you before, we already have our malware protection engines that are working throughout, which will flag malware immediately. Apart from that, when it comes to stolen devices, if your corporate device is stolen, we also have remote wipe, which can wipe all of the corporate data from the devices, and it can also be disconnected from the corporate network as well. So this is how we deal with unauthorized USBs and stolen devices. So that's just 3 use cases that I covered. So you can use this, you can fit this method or this program into any cybersecurity framework. So if you take NIST, for example, it's identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Identify is basically visibility, what you need to have eyes on. Protect is basically, control. What do you need to do before you're attacked, or to stop an attack from happening? What do you need to do proactively? Detect, respond, and recover is what you do after you have been breached. Say you have been attacked. How do you detect it? How do you respond to it? How do you recover from it? So you can take this and apply this across your endpoints, networks, apps, data, and identities. So I covered some of this in the examples that we saw. So this again is a much broader version of it. Now, where do we come in here? What do we do as a managed engine, as a vendor who provide endpoint security? So our vision here is to provide proactive endpoint security and reactive endpoint security within the same product or within the same console with the same agent, so that our users don't have to have 4 or 5 different solutions, have to spend on all of these solutions, have to get them all on board to protect their endpoints. So that is our major goal, and that is how we've been building capabilities into our product as well. So we started off as a client management or a device management solution, after which we moved to manage mobile devices as well, as things started getting mobile. And then what we did was we thought, hey, all device management should be unified. It should not be just client management and mobile management separately. Your desktops, your laptops, your mobiles, all of it are devices, and they all have to be unified. So then we became a unified endpoint management solution. And then in 2018, we started adding security capabilities so that we can also provide endpoint security. So the first thing that we added to our portfolio was browser security. We were one of the earliest vendors to do that. I think now people are starting to see why browser security is important. But then we were one of the earliest vendors to add browser security to our portfolio. And on top of that, we incrementally built on top of that. So we have vulnerability management, we have app management, app control, we have peripheral device management, we have endpoint data leakage prevention, we have BitLocker encryption. So all of this on the proactive end. And now we have also added reactive security to it. So we have anti-ransomware and we have next-gen AV. We're also working on our EDR, so very soon we will also have that as part of the solution. So that's all from my end. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask me. Or you can also catch me at the booth. Our booth is hard to miss. It's the really yellow one right there next to Microsoft. So you can also catch me there. Thank you.